With over 400 celebrity interviews and tons of pop culture nerdiness, Too Opinionated is a safe haven for your inner geek. Find us at meistercon.com or on YouTube under MeisterCon Pod. And please subscribe. It would really help us out. Thanks, everybody. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Too Opinionated. So excited today. I've got actor and now author Thaao Penghlis with me. So welcome, Thaao.
Oh, thank you. Nice to be here.
Yeah, it's a real honor to speak with you, sir. You have been, I was looking when I was kind of researching because I grew up, kind of being forced to watch soap operas when I was younger because that's what my mother watched. And if you were home from school, that's what was on. Yeah. But I saw that you've done over 15,000 episodes.
Oh, really?
Does it feel like it?
I always said, what are you going to do with your brain when you die? I said, I'd give it to science, so that when they look at the brain, they'll say, what the hell was this man thinking? All those stories we do, and make them realistic to a point. But it was, in those days, it was all about family, families looking at families and feeling either better off or worse off, or depending on, they loved the love stories, and they loved the fact that our show was all about unrequited love. And of course, I was the villain in most times. And if you don't have a good villain, you don't have a good hero. So I enjoyed being a villain because I knew I could get away with it. Whereas in real life, I was nowhere near that kind of thinking. But yeah, it was good. It was a lot of fun. And also it allowed people a reason to stay home and not having to go out. I mean, these days, people spend their time online shopping.
That's right.
Right? So for us, it was, entertaining. It's different today. It's not the same world. I was part of a golden age, I think, with the actors I was with, and traditional American. It was a Greek boy coming from Australia and suddenly being in America, and no one said, oh, we don't have foreigners in soaps. And in those days, they didn't. So I was the first actor in General Hospital that had a foreign accent.
Yeah.
And then from there, it started to develop. But I only stayed there for 3 months, but it was a very big story. And then I went to Days of Our Lives, and that's what started it all. And it was wonderful. But everybody was white. You know what I mean? All the characters were white. And suddenly this swarthy character comes in, and they're going, who's this? And why do we have this man in our environment? And so actors took it seriously. Yeah. There was a kind of confrontation in a way to test me as to what kind of balls I had. And they used to, it was not an easy time. But after a while, when the character became popular, and because I've had, 41 years now, longevity. So, but, the thing that I got into daytime, or wherever it went, was I wanted to take my journeys. When people say to you, oh, so how come you ended up in the soaps? And I said, because it paid for all those expensive journeys I took. So, and plus, it allowed me to fill my brain with other cultures, rather than just being in soaps. And really, sometimes stories were great, sometimes they weren't. But what it did, it filled me up. So when I came back to work, I had all this passion in me of what I had just seen and experienced. And that's what made, I think, someone said, what gave the character longevity? It was those journeys. I love that. I've had some really, let me put this out. I've had some dangerous encounters in the Middle East. Yeah. Where they tried to, the Hezbollah, who took me out of the car when I was exploring Alexander the Great, and threw me against the wall because they thought I was an Israeli spy. And the podcast, the last one, is the reason why I decided to do this. In Egypt, they tried to kidnap me at the pyramids at 1 o'clock in the morning. And so, and the way I escaped is I tell that story. And then also when I went to Israel, they thought I looked familiar to them, the Mossad agents. And so they circled me at the airport and grabbed me and thought I was an assassin. So all those things, I thought, you know what, I should share these stories. And I
Did you
grabbed,
let them know that you just play bad guys on TV?
yes, but the initial thing is, you can't talk to them because they're very serious.
Yeah,
Secret agents are very serious.
sure.
They think you're excusing yourself, and it's the way they handle you. So I learned after a while to just stay in the present until they're quietened down. And I started to look at them, and I didn't, even though I may have shown fear within myself, not to them, but in many ways, it made my life more exciting. I didn't come back to America and say, "Oh, I had a lovely time. I went to the place where Christ was born. I went and saw the pyramids." No, I had some really tough times,
Yeah,
and
those are terrifying stories.
Mm. So that's why the first part of the podcast, because I always wanted to be an archaeologist, but I couldn't afford to go to the university, and it took too many years, and I didn't have that kind of time. So I decided to become an amateur archaeologist and go to explore the world. And one of the greatest time was when I was 26, my first trip to Egypt. I took an acid trip on a camel. Yes. I know.
Did you
Those
say on a
days
camel?
experimented, huh?
Did you say on a camel?
Yeah. Yes. And yes, that was kind of subtle, but yes, on a camel. And it was really an incredible experience because the guide I was with had no idea, but he said to me, we got along very well. He said to me that he would like to take me to a tomb that had just been discovered, and they were waiting for him so that he could walk into the tomb for the first time in over 4,000 years. So he said, "How would you like that position?" And so I went to the tomb of Mer, 2340 BC, and I was the first person in all those thousands of years to walk through. And in that place, I discovered my first archaeological, when I started digging within the sand, because no one had been there all that time.
Yeah.
And I found these jewels in there, and I found these mummified cloths. So I have some of it. They allowed me to take it in those days. But, that's how it began. And that got me interested more and more. And from then on, I started to explore Schliemann, who discovered Troy, because I'm a big fan of, say, the Crusaders.
Yeah.
I've always liked war movies. So I always liked the Trojan War with the Greeks and the Trojans. I also love that Schliemann discovered and made the books of Homer, the Iliad and the Odyssey, as being real and not myth, and how he put the flesh and bones on these characters. And so I started to explore them, and that's why I started to write as well. And then 2 years ago, I thought of the idea, and I'll tell you why I did this. Is I heard that Alexander the Great, no one's been able to find his tomb. And in that tomb, it's supposed to be full of gold. And all the ancient emperors used to go and visit and pay homage to him. Even Nero stole his breastplate. So I said to myself, I'm going to explore Alexander the Great. And so I went to Alexandria, and there was a mosque called the Daniel Mosque. And that's where they thought possibly could be Alexander's tomb underneath that, but because of its religious situation, they said no. So I went, and the keeper of the mosque came out, and he says, "What can I do for you?" I said, "Oh, can I see your mosque?" And he says, "Why would you be interested in seeing our mosque?" I said, "Because I heard that Ulrich Schliemann had come, and he believed Alexander the Great was buried underneath." He goes, "No. Where did you hear that?" And so I gave him $20. And then he said, "Oh, would you like to come in?" And I said, "Yes, I would." And there in the middle of that mosque is a big hole. And I said, "Oh, what's that hole?" And he said, "Oh, underneath is," then he said, "Would you like to see?" And I said, "Yes." So he put a ladder down. So I walked from 21st century Alexandria. And within 10 seconds, when I walked down, I was now walking in first century Alexandria. So, to me, I'm walking on the earth of ancestries from 2,000 years ago. And what was there? All these tombs, emptied, but all these tombs. And it went in and in and in. But because it was dangerous of possibly it falling in, they didn't allow me to go too far. So because of that discovery, I thought, I'm walking the ancient road.
Yeah.
So what can I write about those experiences? So that's how it started.
That's amazing. And I've always been a very amateur history buff, and I too was, intrigued with Greek mythology and Homer and all that. And I love the war stuff too, all the way up to modern times. I love the idea behind this podcast. So the podcast is called The Lost Treasures, is that right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I love the idea that you're kind of diving into some of that stuff, and trying to figure out if and what was real and what was
Yeah.
just myth. I think that's a terrific idea for a podcast. How long have you been doing that one?
It's taken me 2 years, but 20 years of research. At one point, I went to the Gennadius Library, which is the American library in Athens, and the Schliemann family had left 60,000 documents of his in the library. So I went to a museum there, and a guy recognized me because I had done Mission Impossible, and it was
Right.
very popular in Greece, right? So he
That
said
was that was the remake, right? The
Yes,
one from the
yes,
80s.
in 1988.
Yeah.
Yes, and so he said to me, "What can I do for you?" And I said, "I would love to meet the Minister of Culture." And he picked up the phone and called the Minister of Culture, and he told the minister who I was, and he says, "He can come in this afternoon if you want." So I went to meet with him. From him, after explaining what I was interested in, he allowed me to go to Schliemann's palace, which was closed at the time. It's
Yeah.
now the Gennadius Museum. Sorry, the what do you call it? The of coins. It's the numismatic museum. And from there, I said, I also would like to explore the documents of Schliemann that I hear are located in the library. And he approved both. And I thought, celebrity does sometimes open doors.
Right.
And yeah, I don't know why.
I mean, you might as well use it for good, right?
Right. You're passing on good information. Also, it's a celebratory kind of history of Greece. And so I went through 60,000 documents in 2 weeks. I read through his diaries. I went through all the stuff that they'd written about him in the 19th century. So the idea of writing about him and the exploration. So then I went to Troy. And so then I sat at the ruins of Troy, and imagine, I took a bottle of champagne and some caviar with me because I wanted it to be celebratory, because I thought, listen, how many times you get a chance to sit at the ruins of Troy and imagine in your mind that in front of you was where the Great War took place?
Yeah.
So that's how it all started. And not only that, I finished writing a script with my partner, and she and I have just finished it. It's a very good script. It really is about his world and how he always said, Schliemann, who in 1830, he said, as a boy of 8, he said, "One day I'm going to find the gold of Troy." And in 1873, he did. So, a young boy at 8 thinking, and all his family would laugh at him. And, we're all different. We all come in with different targets in life, and different things that we're interested in. And I found myself more of the world I was interested in, not just the country I was living in. And I got over that, and so I thought, well, how do other cultures live? And so when I went through all that with Schliemann, I just thought, oh my God, this man in the 19th century, even though he was ridiculed, had put to us and he was the father of archaeologists.
Yeah.
Of archaeology. And from that point on, archaeology became something rather serious. And so today we thank him in many ways for making 2 enormous poems, the Iliad and the Odyssey, realistic. And so when you explore those areas, I cannot tell you, I mean, I don't know how much time we have in life. I'm not talking about your show. How much
time all time you want on the show.
When people tell you they're bored, they're boring.
Yeah.
There's so much to be interested in, but we get bogged down because finances, politics, people's opinion about races, we're still battling that. I don't know why people get so upset because this, like Australia, this is a melting pot.
Yeah.
The beauty of this country is that it allows all these different races to come together. And what a culture it's made. Look at the diversity, even in our food.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly right.
Yeah. So to me, I was an immigration official. When I was 19, I was meeting immigrants coming to Australia, and I saw the difficulties just like my parents had, because they came from Greece, and my father ended up basically digging up roads. And he was a cane cutter. My mother was doing embroidery because that's all she knew. But the important is to raise the children, and so that you go beyond your parents, which we did. But if you don't understand, because this country is built on immigration,
That's right.
I
Yeah, it
believe the
absolutely
way
is.
we've been handling it,
Oh, the way we've been handling it is just a disaster.
disaster. It's just terrible. And who's coming in, and to me, I believe everybody should come through the natural order, which is
Yeah.
applying and waiting your turn, because then we find out who this person is. Do we want them in the country? Do we not want them in the
That's
country?
right.
But when so many people come in and they're just coming, listen, there are the refugee situation. I mean, look, and when you go to Greece, when I was a young boy and I used to go to Greece, everybody was Greek.
Right.
Now you're looking at all these different colored people talking Greek, and Greeks don't like it and I understand they want to be pure in their race. But then I said, but we're not pure. Who's pure? Even in the ancient world, none of the Turks were in Greece for 350 years. Greece in the ancient world were in with the Persians. I mean, right. Egyptians. I mean, that's the world. It's not white.
It's a good thing.
It's a good thing in many ways, but people need to argue, and people need, offer me and unto you. That's the way people deal with these. Now, I don't want to talk about my problems now, but look at you and your problems, and look what all that stuff. We need to be kinder.
Yeah, we absolutely do. And there's no reason not to be. It doesn't cost you anything.
No. As I always say, kindness is very inexpensive.
Yeah. No, but a lot of people act like it's very expensive. Like it costs them something to be nice.
Yeah, but I always like to say to them, but what really is bothering you?
Yeah.
What is really bothering you? When you get down to the nitty-gritty. I mean, I had teachers who wouldn't take my bullshit. They'd come and say, okay, let's talk. Let's talk. What's bothering you?
Yeah.
What's not working for you? What is it you're resenting? Someone getting ahead of you, you think? No. Why don't you look at why you came into this world and work on that? Because then you make it richer.
Yeah,
and then you have the insight to see how other people are. That's what it is to understand other cultures.
Yeah, I love that.
That's the best education.
So you're working on a script.
Yes.
Are you going to play the archaeologist in it?
No.
Why
not? Certainly, I never wrote it for that reason. With my partner, I think I'd like to step back and have a look at somebody else. It's enough having explored it and done words. I don't need to play him as well. Listen, I've enjoyed being an actor for many, many years, and it certainly allowed me to survive in America. And in 2008, I became an American citizen because I always said to myself, when I used to watch the old movies of the 50s and 40s, and I'd say, oh, I just love America. When everything was innocent and you had, mama and papa and all the children. Yeah. You'd sit around the table and say grace and all that. I used to love that about America. I thought, oh, look at all that beautiful innocence, Or when Americans would go to war, they were the ones who would be kinder to the enemy than the enemy to us. I mean, if you look at the Japanese, the Chinese, but I just suddenly went, I'd like to be able to stand back and think, I created that. That's why I like to cook, you see. I don't have to so much eat my food. I just want to see others do it.
I love that. Yeah, that's a very giving nature.
Well, yes, because in many ways, it's, it takes a long time to get off of you and onto somebody else.
Yeah.
Or giving to somebody else, I think it's, you find out, you reach a certain stage in your life and you see your whole arc and you see who you've become. And when you've come to that point, you can then turn around and see others. And that's where I am now.
I like
You know,
that.
I can see where someone's coming or where they've arrived. Not always great in this society now because too many boundaries have been smashed. And you know, everybody's saying thank you by text. And that is a real problem for me.
Yeah, me too.
I grew up where people around the table had certain manners and everything, and then they would write a note the next day and thank, or make a call and say what a wonderful evening it was. Because let's face it, when you're having a dinner party, it takes more than an evening. It takes a few days with what you have to do with it. But I don't, because I can't tell how you're really feeling. If you call me, I can hear your voice. Your voice resonates a certain way, and then you can discover what people are thinking or feeling. But that impersonal thing, what's happening to us, it's detachment, and people wonder, and it's happened more and more since we've had COVID. It was don't get me started with COVID and what it's done to people. No,
It
but
was
it's
a rough
really,
couple of years for sure.
it's been terrible. You know, if you haven't worked on yourself and all that time alone, you found out who you are, and a lot of people got scared.
Yeah.
You know, that's why they say, you know, when you go to the bathroom, you don't have to take your phone with you. Be with yourself. You know, see how you're feeling or whatever. You know, but people can't get away from that nattering that's going on, because then they want to get away from who they are. They're not happy with who they are. So they look for the outside for stimulation. And for me, I was very blessed in the fact that I found a route to create my journeys. And when I took all those journeys, I came back with more wisdom, more understanding, and I got a new recipe, you know, things that add to your life rather than, you know, and
Right.
but I find that people these days, you know, you take these journeys and say, well, what was it like? Well, unless you're my age or, you know, older, these days people, you know, take journeys, and I'm thinking that's an education. Share your education. That's why you become a mentor. You know,
Yeah.
we need more mentors. I didn't have a mentor when I was growing up because I couldn't look at my father and ask him questions because he didn't know how to have that exchange. But I came to America and I met some great human beings, men and women, who in some way became my mentors. So that's why in the ancient world, Alexander the Great always would have a young boy with the warrior, because he would need the warrior to help him out. Not emotionally, it would be the woman. The woman would have weakened him. And he believed that a male would keep him stronger because he wouldn't get involved. So to me, it's very important that our young people have mentors, men or women, and find out and teach them with what you've experienced.
Yeah, I
Otherwise,
love that. Yeah, I love that.
I mean, with
I
your
think that's exactly right.
well, how many children do you have?
I've got four,
Oh,
five
really?
grandchildren.
Oh, you've been busy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and of the five grandchildren have all, the oldest one's just four. So they're all very recent.
Wow.
Yeah. It's pretty great though.
Yes, very. Do they have your personality?
You know, my son's he's a lot like me, and my oldest daughter is similar in some ways. You know, she's kind of a combination between her mother and me. And then I've got two stepchildren, but I've been around, you know, for most of their lives. So even they have some of the same type of tendencies or things that they like that I like, you know. So just the fact that we've spent so much time together, I've rubbed off on them a little bit, good or bad, but that's happened.
I mean, look at us. We don't know each other. And
Yeah.
yet, because we have maybe similar principles or similar interests, you know, that we can have those exchanges.
Yeah.
You know, and you don't have that as much anymore. You know, people don't really talk to each other. People get too restless. I had a friend who just came back. He wasn't dealing with his life very well, and he was drinking a lot. And when I questioned him, he started screaming at me because people don't want to face
They
what they
want to
go.
face the hard stuff.
No, don't want to face the hard stuff. So I thought, you know, let people, unless they ask you, don't say anything.
Well,
Let it,
what's the rule you always heard growing up? If you don't have something nice to say, just don't say anything.
Yes, well, somebody sent me a song they just composed, and they seem to be proud of it. And when I listened to it, I thought to myself, well, it's a little bit on one level, and it's very spiritual, but it doesn't have a bridge. You know, when you hear
Yeah.
songs, it's a bridge, right? So I didn't know, do I tell them the truth of what I feel? Did they ask, is that what they wanted? So I thought, well, yes, they sent it to me. So I said what I just said to you. I love the idea. It's great for metaphysical times when you want to go into a meditation or a background music, but it becomes mundane because it keeps repeating the same sound. And there's birds in the background, and the birds sound the same right through. Well, birds have different sounds, and that wasn't incorporated. And so by the end, I thought it never elevated. It never went. So I sent that, and then I got a message this morning saying, "Thank you so much. I hope you have a good journey," and all things like that. Nothing about what I just said.
Yeah, it's tough to take,
Yeah.
negative or let's say constructive feedback.
Yes, it's not, I wouldn't say it was negative because it wasn't put that way. You know, I've been where people will say, where I went into classes and they said, "Oh, you're a terrible actor. I couldn't tell the difference between you and the chair." And of course, I could have given it up in the beginning because I was terrible.
Yeah.
But they challenged me. I came back and I thought, I've got to prove to them that I'm better than the chair, that I can go beyond the chair. And that's what that's what did it for me. But
I mean, you would like I've always tried to be very open for that type of feedback because that's how you grow and that's how you improve things. And don't send stuff out. When I send the podcast out, I get some negative comments, but I try not to let those bother me. I try to say, okay, where were they coming from? What could I change that might make it a little different for them? So I try to improve on that. But not everybody does that, because it's difficult to especially when you create something, it's difficult to hear, kind of that constructive feedback.
yeah, well, the thing is, you also allow someone to have a choice.
Yeah.
Because then they can say, okay, all right, I'll do less of that and I'll put more of that in, or I'll find a way to put a bridge in. There was none of that. There was no thank you about the insights. And therefore, that told me in a quiet way that they were not happy with what I said.
Right.
I mean, I cannot tell you, the only time that I've had real growth is when someone was tough on me.
Yeah.
It was never, listen, when you get a compliment, you go, oh, great. And then you let it go. When you get a criticism, it stays and it affects you in a certain way.
That's right.
Either you want to change it, or you can say, you know what, I can be better than that. Thank you. I'll take your information and see what I can do with it. And I'll send you a newer version or whatever.
Right.
But I thought this person thought that they were ready to release it. And I went, oh, this is not going to work. So I say it's like today, someone sent me a pilot and they said, would you watch it and tell us what you think? So then it puts you in the position of having to analyze it and critique it. And, if you're not developed, you're not going to take it easily.
That's right.
There were times when criticism came, I remember there were times people cried. I got emotional when my teacher told me that, I wasn't good enough, or that the whole scene that we had shown in class after a whole month of rehearsal was a terrible scene. But when you worked at it and you came back and showed them, then you go out and you have a steak or something, and you have a meal or something and say, wow, that was great, it was worth it. But, there's different ways of taking things. And if you know who the person opposite you and what they're saying is coming from a core center, then you can allow. But people are not always easy to.
Yeah. When you were preparing for this podcast, did you, and reading through all of those papers, did anything surprise you? Did you find out anything you're like, oh wow, I didn't realize that?
When I went through those documents, I was reading 19th century critiques, as opposed to today. The language chosen, it was, you know, it wasn't basic language. It was very elevated language. It was
kind of flowery, is what
flowery. Yes, thank you. And you know, we're talking about Victorian age.
Yeah.
And what were they like? You know, that's why I say to an actor who's having a struggle with his character, I said, find a chair that you can sit in that will remind you that how the character would sit.
Oh, I like that.
Do you know what I mean? Because if you're playing a 19th century character, then that chair is going to be a little lower and a little less comfortable, because it wasn't about being comfortable. It was about, you know, being still and having your body, you know, you don't cross your legs. So all those things add to it. So when I think the thing that got me the most was when I was reading about in the Second World War, during the time when the Nazis fell and the Russians came into Germany, Schliemann had given the treasure, which he thought was the Trojan treasure, but it was really the treasure from 1,000 years earlier.
Okay.
But he didn't know. But that treasure that he found had a lot of gold. I mean, there was one necklace and a headpiece that was over 16,000 pieces of gold.
Oh, wow.
Now, when he found all those, you can imagine what it must have been like touching all this stuff that was so ancient. So because Greece wouldn't give him a room, a section of the museum that said the Schliemann wing, they said no, which to me were stupid.
Yeah,
so he said, well, if you're not going to acknowledge what I had worked on and how many years and how much money I spent to make this relevant, then I'm going to give it to Germany. So he gave it to Germany. Now, when the Russians start coming in, the Germans realized that they were going, because that was one of the best known historical treasures. So they put it in a big, big box and hid it behind a wall in the zoo.
Really?
In the zoo. And so when the Allies came in, and so were the Americans looking for it, the Russians got really frustrated because the Germans had damaged so much in Russia and killed so many of its people.
Yeah.
So the Russian leader said to them, bring me back as many treasures as you can. So when they were looking for the Schliemann gold, they were so frustrated. They were in the zoo, and one soldier was really frustrated because they couldn't find it, because someone said possibly they could have hidden it in the zoo somewhere. So he got so frustrated, he kicked the wall in. Would you know the leg went straight through the wall, and behind that wall was the treasure of Schliemann that he found in Troy.
Amazing.
They took that treasure. They thought, though, the headline was the Trojan treasure lost again, but this time forever, destroyed in this war. Well, we didn't know that in 1994, two curators from the Pushkin Museum went across the street to take some papers. Excuse me, let me just turn that thing off. Sorry. Let me take the documents and shred them across the street. So they went across the street and they were shredding documents, and suddenly a piece of paper from somebody else dropped on the floor. When they picked it up, on top of it, number 1 was Schliemann's gold. And they said, Schliemann's gold, what would it be doing here? So in 1994, they went and searched all the boxes. They stole over 5 million pieces of art, the Russians, right? They've only brought and given back, you know, a third of it. They opened the box and there was all that gold, right? So they thought, we have to let the world know that it's been found. And so they sent the information to the American Arts magazine, and that's when it was released. And so, of course, Russia had to now surface the treasure. And so Greece and Germany and Turkey were all claiming the rights of the treasures. But there it was. It disappeared in the Second World War and was found, and that was in 1945, and found in 1994.
Amazing.
So, you know, the treasure that he found in Mycenae, Greece, which started the wars with Agamemnon and Menelaus, who went to Troy, that treasure is magnificent. It's where all those gold masks are.
Yeah.
When he found one of the gold masks, that's in the second podcast. When he lifted that gold mask, on one of them, the face was still there. and within seconds it just deteriorated to dust. So he found 5 tombs, and that treasure, I mean, those swords, I mean, it's in the Archaeological Museum in Athens. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, I love that. That's amazing. What a fun podcast to do. A lot of work, but it just sounds like a blast.
That was a lot of work, a lot of writing. You know, it's the third one is one of my favorites because I spent last July, I reached out to an explorer because they're discovering things about Ulysses, you know, because it took him that many years to come home. But where was the real island? So the third podcast is about where the real island lies and about where his palace is. And this man and I got along really well. And we're going up and down the mountain where they've explored and found the remains of that ancient world. Yeah. And he says, come to my house and let's go and have a drink. This has been a great day. And so we went up, and his wife opened the door and she goes, oh my God, it's Tony DiMera from Days of Our Lives. I said, he said to me, and I went,
Count.
How do you go to that? And I looked at it, he says, why didn't you tell me? I said, when I was going to tell you that I do a soap opera in America. I said, no, this was about you and I discovering these things together. And so that's the third podcast. And then the fourth one. So the first one is finding the Golden Troy and going through the 60,000 documents. So that was my baby. That was the first. And so, and it was good recording it. Do you know what I mean? I had to act it out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It
just sounds like a blast to me. I think that sounds great. I mean, I'm sure the work going up to it was, you know, took a while, but once you get there and you're ready to do the podcast, I mean, that just sounds like fun.
Yes. And so someone said to me, well, what do you do after this? I said, well, if this works out, I'd like to look at the French kings, Louis XIV, XV, and the 16th, and the last Dauphin of France. And that's a fabulous story. So there are many stories out there. And how do you tell them? That's the secret, is how do you tell them? Because, you know, when people sit at dinner parties and talk about stories and you're saying, can we please move on? You know, people pause. They have too many bridges along the story, and people are not listening to who they're telling the story to. So I think it's very important that when you tell a story, do it with intensity, and when anybody interrupts you, tell them that you're not finished. That's what I do. And I say, and what happened? That's what I say. When they're going on too long with the story, I say, and what happened? They say, what? I said, what happened? So cut to the chase, in other words.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some people don't have endings.
I think we've gotten away from that type. I mean, that used to be how we communicated, was through the stories, but now we want everything just quick. Just give me the bullet points or give me the ending. You know, where's it end up? That's all I need. I don't need the how it got there.
Yeah. That's
I think we've lost something with that.
But don't you think that we've lost a lot in movies because we're always not to be distracted, to keep the action going? It's all noise. It's all noise. It's all noise. And you come out and it's like you've had too much popcorn.
Yeah, I've said that for years, because it's, to me, we've gotten away, and I think we're starting to get back with some of the independent stuff, but we've gotten away from just good storytelling, good writing, and it's all about the special effects.
Right.
Well, who needs that? I you know, when I was growing up, we didn't have all those special effects, and we were fine because the story was so good and the acting was so good. It made you believe it. I don't know.
Well, when they listen to the radio in those days, in the early days, and you had your Dick Tracy's and your Mandrake and all the rest of them, you were intrigued because you'd had to listen to get the clues.
That's right.
But that's, you know, now it's come to the point where it's just a lot of noise, and you come out and the movies are not satisfying because there's no script.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
Completely. Are you an Indiana Jones fan?
Yes.
Yeah, me too.
Yes, I love Indiana Jones. Oh my God, I have a hat, you know. I have a hat that I wear when I travel, you know, because and long before Indiana Jones came, I've had this hat for years, and it's, you know, wear and tear, but you know, you could sit on it. But it's the thing I take with me. It's my identity in many ways. You know, when you see explorers, they're always wearing a hat.
Yeah, right. You have to have a good hat if you're an explorer.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and when I went with Crawshaw, who took me through the journey of Ulysses last year, he said, "Bring a hat." I said, "Oh." So I said to the driver, "Oh, stop here. Let me get a hat." I had 12 seconds. I grabbed this hat, put it on my head, and not even thinking what it looks like. And I went, when I started, you know, when I was with him, because it was so hot, it was almost 100 degrees. I suddenly realized, I thought, oh, this is not my hat. You know, this hat is part of the identity. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Just like
you have to find the right hat.
you have to find the right hat, and when it does, it's sexy. And you know, when you see the whip in Indiana Jones, I mean, you know, all those things, those things that are part of his character, is what gets. You know what I mean? It's part of the image that you do. And I don't know why women haven't been explorers really as much as men. Maybe because it's much more dangerous for women to travel, you know, on their own, because
I'm sure that's part of it.
You know.
Yeah. So you've written a book too?
I've written 2 books.
2 books. Well,
yes.
Okay. So the one that's all. It's got the best name for a book I've seen. I love it because it's called Places: The Journey of My Days, My Lives, and the Cookbook: Seducing Celebrities One Meal at a Time.
Right.
I love that.
Yeah. So that's 2 books.
So, that's 2 books.
2 books. Yeah. The first one is Places, basically the journeys of my days and my lives. But the other one, someone said to me, well, why don't you do a cookbook? Because I cook a lot. And I went, oh, I don't know. What would I call it? And I said, well, what is food to you? I said, seduction. Food is to seduce.
Yeah.
So that's where Seducing
Celebrities. It works for me, you know, or works on me. I won't say for me. It works on me.
Yeah. Because, you know, when something's really, and presentation, you have to create an atmosphere. It takes a whole thing. It's not just about putting a plate in front of someone's face. You have to create an atmosphere so that, you remember Doris Roberts?
Roberts. Yeah.
Doris, yeah. When she used to come to my home every week, the first thing she used to say is, oh, the smell. Oh, what are you cooking? And then she'd look and, oh, look at the atmosphere. And then she didn't want to touch the table. So it's all about the sensualness of what is presented, so that when someone sits down, the way they look at the food, it looks like it's so enticing. I see people present food and you're going, you don't put salmon and you put baked potatoes with it. It doesn't go, because the potato is dominant and heavy, whereas salmon is light. So you've got to understand that's why the great chefs, when you see them, I mean, show me those great chefs. You've seen them on the television.
Oh, yeah.
Look at the way they present it. In the end, it's the presentation. It's so important.
Yeah, my wife always says that I eat with my eyes first. So with her, she's all about the presentation, because that's, you know, what gets me excited about whatever it is we're having for dinner.
Absolutely. And then the smell too, you know, when you come into the room. I mean, there's nothing like the smell of a roast or a chicken. Do you know what I mean? And how you present those things, you know, and the gravy or the sauce that you put on top, and what are the vegetables, you know, or what is your first course, you know. Like I like to do a particular Italian cheese that's very moist and soft, burrata, and I love to wrap that with prosciutto. And then what I do around it, I put leaves of basil and some small tomatoes, and then I pour the olive oil and the vinaigrette and over it, and it is and then sometimes if I have it, I'll put maybe a little bit of caviar on top, and it looks so beautiful that people sometimes don't want to spoil the plate. You know what I mean? They go, oh yeah, wow, this is great. So I think first courses are important, you know.
Yeah, I love that. Do you have a like a go-to meal if you're meeting somebody for the first time and you're cooking for him? You know, what do you
rack of lamb?
Oh, okay.
I love rack of lamb. I I don't like. I like a lot. I've got a lot of different pastas that I do. I like linguine clams.
Oh,
I have to check with people if they eat clams, because some people don't. I also like to do branzino, a whole branzino. That, and then you find people, oh, I can't look at that because there's a head on it,
right.
things like that. And I said, I'll get over it, will you? So something, no, please cut the head. I can't look at it. We're used to fish being presented in a fillet fashion.
That's right.
To me, in the Greeks, we get a fish, and it's just like, when you do a baby pig, you bring the whole thing.
Yeah.
When I grew up at Easter, and they bring the big bowl of soup, floating in it was a goat's head. So, I started, and I remember when I was
I might pause if I saw a goat head.
Well, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that again. But I remember growing up in the suburbs in Sydney, Australia, and this woman said, "Oh, here they come, those dagos, those garlic munchers." And I used to go, "Oh," and then the woman who shop it was, she'd say, "Oh, hello, Tess. So, what are you having for dinner tonight?" So I could shock those women. I'd say, "Oh, we're going to have fish." "Oh, really?" "Yes, I like to get the eyes, and I love to chew on them, because you can really chew on them. There's great flavor." And the other woman looked at the other and she said, "Oh my God, is that possible?" That's how it was, because they thought we brought in a new cuisine to Australia. It wasn't the British meat and potatoes and peas, which is what they had, meat pies and things like that. We brought a healthier diet, Mediterranean diet.
Oh yeah, Mediterranean diet's probably the best diet out there. Like if you just want to be healthy and maintain a weight, that's the best diet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I get we'll go on kicks where we'll eat pretty Mediterranean for several months, and then maybe we'll switch to something else. But that's our favorite kind of diet to go to, especially if we've been eating unhealthy. We try to switch to that to straighten ourselves out.
Yes, pizzas and all that type of
That's
thing.
right.
I never understand. I mean, I don't mind a slice of pizza during hors d'oeuvres or something,
Yeah.
but I don't think of it as a main meal. The way they bribe their children is how, because they love pizza, but how good is pizza for you? Not very good.
Not very good.
Not that cheese. I mean, it binds them. So to me, it's you have to raise them properly with good food so they can understand by serving good food what it does for your body as opposed to the other. So it's an education, you have to come from the time. But, it's like you go to a restaurant and kids are on the phone, and you look at those parents and you're thinking, you didn't bother with your child. You're raising them where you put them in a room, and here's your phone, here's your instead of a book, or instead, teaching the young how to develop.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
We definitely have gotten away from just reading.
Yeah.
Which is so important, as far as developing imagination, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So on the acting side,
yes.
How long will you be doing Days of Our Lives? Till it ends? I mean, it's been going now for what?
57
50 years? Yeah.
57 now, 58 year now. They're going to go till they get their 60th anniversary. Part of me has lost interest. Part of it is because the natural element is with my father on the show, who was Stefano. I was his eldest son. I was supposed to be the next in line. And I remember the head writer came to me one day and said, your character is so complicated. I'm finding it hard to write for you. And I thought to myself, all these years, writers have never said that to me, because I was complicated, because I went beyond the norm.
Right.
I would make something of the language that they gave me. So when he said that, I thought, oh, I think he doesn't understand my world. And so I can see it in the script. So they gave the position to somebody else younger. And I went, where's the mentor? So what we've done is we've taken the elements that were up and down, action, thought-provoking, drama, romance, and it's like, Joe and I we were the European men, right? We had a different flavor. We spoke differently. We ate differently. We treated each other differently, in contrast to who the others were, the other families. That's what brought the conflict. That's why people loved us. Why on else has the DiMeras that I started in 1981, why has that family, I mean, the other families have come and gone, but why did that family remain? Because it had balls.
Yeah. Well,
You
yeah,
know what I mean?
you got to play like a foil to some of the other characters.
Yeah, so it was good, but it all changed. And listen, everybody to what they need to do. So what has happened is I've got a new thing going with the podcast.
Yeah.
And the exploration, because after I'm going to Greece soon, and I'm going because my nephew's getting married, and I'm going to go to Turkey afterwards, because I love monasteries, I love churches, because there's history there, and you can smell the burnt candles,
right?
You know what I mean? And you think of how many thousands of people have been in there, and I had spent 2 weeks exploring Egypt and to where the Holy Family, when they escaped from Jerusalem into Egypt and brought the Coptic religion, I explored that for 2 weeks. I went to all these monasteries and everything, and where they hid, they made them sacred spaces. And so I go to those places because there's history behind it. So I'm going to go to Hierapolis in Turkey, and that's where, further down is Ephesus, where Paul of Tarsus, St. Paul, where he spread the gospel, and the same with the other. I mean, even though all of the disciples had tragic deaths, I want to explore the Christianity of that time. So that's what I'm going to do. That's my next, along with the French kings.
I love that you just take these journeys. I mean, it's like a vacation, but on steroids.
Yeah, but let's face it. How long can you explore LA? Really?
Yeah.
I mean,
not forever. That's for sure.
No, and I think I've overstayed. I think I have overstayed here. It doesn't interest me much anymore. New York does, because of the theater. I mean, there's still, there's very real New York. Here you're in your car and, to go to the grocery store and do whatever, and nobody really talks to each other.
Right.
So I'm thinking, how many years do I have where I can still do what I'm doing? And the great thing about writing is I could be in Australia with my family, because I'd like to go. Let's face it, I haven't spent much time with my siblings, and we have a great relationship. I spend a month with them in Christmas. And so I would want to explore that further, because in many ways, I would say that I have had a life well lived.
Yeah.
And you could become an example, So just like those who came before me, they had life. The things that I was attracted to was people who knew more than I did. And so by them telling me who and what they've done and what's remained with them, what has remained with people, that they have something to say about it. And so the same way, I'm going home, I'm going to pay, I've been privileged. So I even though I had $180 in my pocket when I came, but I started from scratch.
Yeah.
Nobody did me any favors. It wasn't like because you have a certain look, it's going to be easy for you. No, it was never easy. There was always the leading man, or someone would say, oh no, he's not. Even when I did Mission, I had to audition twice. I did test twice. Why? Too good looking for the role of the guy with the mask. And I'm thinking, what? So I had to, when I went to my next audition, I just, put gray in my hair and did all these different things and toned down everything. And I was so angry in the audition of a man who was on death row. I screamed at everybody at ABC and Paramount, and they thought it was the character. It wasn't. It was me screaming at them for having the audacity for me to have to come back in again because that got in my way. So, you use your material in the best way you can, and there's nothing like experience, So, and then I got it, and they all stop screaming. I thought, you sons of bitches did it because you tried to ruin me with my agent. My agent, I said, I had a great audition. Well, they're not going to use you. What? What do you mean they're not going to use you? They were very excited. No, they're not going to use you. So they gave all their excuses. But you know what? Let me try and get you to come back in. And he did. And that's what gave me the gravitas to go in and perform. And so that's how it's been in life, you know. Don't, when I punch you, get up, because I'll find some place in you that I'm going to hit back. That's going to hurt, you know, just once, just one thing. But
I love that. And it's worked out pretty well.
Oh, yeah. Listen, it worked out because I didn't give up, you know.
Yeah.
You know, the old saying, when people say no, you say, F you. You know, so listen.
Well, that's it. And if you're in the entertainment business, you're going to hear a lot more no's than yeses.
Yes, and you do. And even people who became big stars, right? When you hear their stories, a lot of them didn't come, you know, didn't get, they were rejected many times.
Yeah.
You know.
It only takes that one big role, though.
Yes. Yeah. You know, when I did Altered States with Ken Russell and because I did a play in New York and they saw me, and then I did 2 more films after that, The Bell Jar and what's his name, who directed Rocky, John Avildsen. I did Slow Dancing in the Big City. The strike came, and the only thing that was available in those days, in 1980s, was the soaps. Just like now, we can work, even though the strike's on, because we have a contract till next year, till 24. Right. So we can still work. So in many ways, I've come full circle.
Yeah. Yeah, that's absolutely true, because we're going through some of that now.
Yeah, it's not an easy time. And in many ways, we were talking about it the other day with friends over dinner. We were so glad we were part of the golden age, or at the end of it, because we saw how well it was done and what, you know, kind of stamina you had to survive, and how we had great writers and great producers, and we didn't have corporations coming in and wanting to sell a product and just messing it up. You know what I mean? I mean, how do you mess up chicken soup? There are many ways to mess up chicken soup, but then they've done that.
Yeah, they have.
You know, so anyway.
Well, sir, thank you so much for taking a little bit of time with me. I could talk to you about the history stuff all night. I'm so interested in that stuff. I'm definitely going to go and listen to the podcast.
Oh, please. Yeah. You know, it's a great story, because it's a man who believed in himself from a very young age and how he made his dream come true. And, you know, there's nothing more beautiful than discovering treasure. Do you know what I mean? There's something about you're touching it for the first time in 2,000, 3,000 years. And then you look at it and who wore this or who used this. And it's just your imagination goes. And so we're still exploring. I mean, if we're not exploring, you know, what's life worth?
That's right. Yeah, you should keep pushing forward, you know, discovering new things. I think that's what keeps you going.
I mean, look at your backdrop. Every one of those look angry. Right? All those characters you have, as I was looking at them, thinking, look at all those. Look what they do. They fought. I mean, even Pacino, you even have the shark there. But, you know, they all fought for something. I mean, there is a scream of survival.
Yeah.
Even Mel Gibson from Braveheart. Look at what he
I know. They all look very angry behind me.
Yeah.
Keep me on my toes.
Yeah, but you know, at the same time, you realize it's not just about anger. It's that they stood up for what they believed in.
That's right.
You know.
Yeah.
But you're a charming man. I thank you for your time. And
well, you're so welcome. I hope you'll come back at some point.
Oh,
it's been so much fun.
Yeah. Maybe after you've listened to them, it's going to be released September 5th, and then every 2 weeks after that. But maybe after that you can discuss and tell me what you thought.
Oh, I'd love to do that.
Yeah.
I'm excited to listen to it. My son's always bringing me podcasts, and they're good. He has pretty good taste. But now I've got one that I can give him, so he'll be impressed with me.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Thank you.
You're so welcome, sir. Before you go, are you on social media? If you are, where can we find you?
You can find me on Instagram, on Twitter, and you can find me on Facebook.
Yeah, that's all you really need.
Yeah, yeah, and I've got some interesting interviews coming up, and one is with Maurice Bernard, who does the State of Mind.
Oh,
And I had a session with him, and he was going crazy over my history of the journeys I've taken. And he was like, I talk off, I just rattle off. So I'm going back on his show to talk about this, which I'm really excited with, because it's not talking about soap operas, and it's not talking about acting. Really talking
like actual
about
history.
Yeah, it's what brought us here, and there's so much to encourage and to appreciate about those who've come before us and have left their mark and made us think about our own lives. So
that's right. Well, that's what history does. It kind of makes you kind of re-examine your own path.
Yeah, because what's nice is you and I didn't have anything planned to talk about except the podcast probably, but here we are having a mature conversation about things that resonate.
Yeah. Well, that was, when I was telling you about the podcast and us discovering that we weren't actually different opinions. We actually, my son and I held mostly the same opinions. And from that point, it really just became about having good conversations. And I think that's exactly what we've done today.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Hold on one second for me, sir.
Yes.
Thaao Penghlis, which really, if you think about it, it's a very good actor name, but it would make a really good archaeologist. I asked him about Indiana Jones because, like, I would watch a show about him just traveling and trying to look into history. I would totally watch that show because that's something that he's obviously very passionate about, and I think that would be really fun to watch him discover some of that stuff. I just really enjoyed that. I've been a fan of his for a long time. I was telling him off camera, my mother was a fan of Days of Our Lives, and I remember those first episodes when he came on the show, which was in the early 80s, and I recognized him from seeing him on shows like Policewoman and Kojak, Magnum PI. Who's the Boss was a little bit later in the 80s, but he was on that as well. And then we talked a little bit about Mission Impossible. I'm a big Mission Impossible fan from the original series, and then I really enjoyed the remake, which had some of the sons of some of the original actors from the original series. Just really well done. Hope you enjoyed that as well. Thaao is a legend in the soap opera game. And if you are a soap opera fan, there's not too many of them left, but if you're a soap opera fan, please also check out our interview we did a little while back with Eric Braden, who is another soap opera legend. So check that out as well. Hope you enjoyed it. If you're finding us for the first time, thank you for listening, for watching. Love to have your support. It's easy to do. It's free. All we ask is that you subscribe. Doesn't cost you anything. If you prefer to watch, our YouTube channel is MeisterCon Pod. Just hit subscribe there. Hit that subscribe button. If you listen, wherever you're listening to your podcast at or whatever application you're using, just subscribe there. That'll help us as well. Really would appreciate that. We were recently named one of the best podcasts on IMDb, which is the entertainment database. We came in at number 82. Most of those ahead of us were, Marvel podcasts or maybe some of the big ones like Joe Rogan. Some of those were what was ahead of us. There's 15 million podcasts out there. Only 38,000 have made it to the point that they're listed on IMDb. Of those 38,000, we're number 82. So I'm really proud of that. Really appreciate the support. I've said many times we're just a father and son operation. So there's just the two of us. Brett, my son, does all the hard stuff, does the editing and that stuff. But we're very proud of the show that we put out and the guests that we're able to get. So I hope you enjoyed that, and thank you so much for listening. You can find today we put out episode 620. We've been doing this for about 4.5 years. That's a lot of episodes, but you can find all of those audio and video on our website, meistercon.com. So definitely check that out there. Thank you guys so much. Until next time. Bye, everybody. Hi, everybody. I'm once again here to ask for your support. It's been a big year for the Two Opinionated podcast. Back in February, we got to live out a dream, moderate for William Shatner here in our hometown. In May, we passed 100,000 downloads on our YouTube channel, and we followed that up in June with 50,000 downloads on the audio side. We recently posted our 600th episode, which is pretty good volume for just a father and son operation. You know, not too many podcasts can keep that volume up. We've been doing this now for 4.5 years, 600 plus episodes. We recently hit 1,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel, which is a really big deal for us because we've always gotten the views, but have struggled to get people to subscribe. So that 1,000 was a big deal for us. And best of all, we were recently named one of the top podcasts on IMDb, which is the entertainment database. You know, those that are ahead of us, we came in at number 82. Those that are ahead of us are bigger companies like Disney, mostly Marvel, and Joe Rogan, that type of podcast. So for us, being just a small West Virginia father and son podcast, to be in the top 100 out of 15 million, it's a pretty big deal for us. So thank you for everything you've done for us so far. Got a couple little ways, though, that you can help us, and they're free, and they're really easy. If you haven't checked out our YouTube channel yet, please go to YouTube. It's under MeisterCon Pod. Just hit subscribe. It's free. Doesn't cost you anything. Really helps us a ton. And maybe even more important, if you could go to IMDb, imdb.com, look up the Two Opinionated podcast, and just look around the page. Just having that traffic on the page really helps us out. So that's a couple easy ways that you can support us, even if you're not listening or watching all of the time. And we want you to listen and watch, because I think that our guest list, I would put up against anybody, any other show, podcast, anybody out there. I think our guest list holds up. So please check us out. You probably will find somebody that you like, or maybe somebody that you didn't know you liked, but kind of discovered them on there. There's tons of that. If you're into music, we have that too. If you like books, we've got authors on there. If you're more into what goes on behind the scenes in the entertainment world, you know, we've got producers, directors, video artists, anything you can think of that happens behind the scenes, we've had them on the show. So definitely check us out. Thank you guys so much. Until next time. Bye, everybody.